I'm Bruce Tulgan. I am thrilled to be on Leadership and Loyalty with Dov Baron. And we talked about how to be indispensable without becoming overcommitted and suffering from siege mentality and burning out. Don't be a false nice guy.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. Let me ask you, what do you need to do to up-level your leadership? Well, let's understand that CEO turnover is at a record high today. It's difficult to keep good people. However, it's just as difficult to be the kind of leader who steps into the role and feels like the rug could get pulled out at any single moment. So what can you do to nail down your value inside of an organization, to get across that they need you far more than you maybe even need them? Well, stay tuned, because that's exactly where we're going on today's show. I'm your host, Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything by transforming meaning into action. To find out more, you can simply go to dovbaron.com. That's DOVBARON.com. By the way, this episode of Leadership and Loyalty is brought to you in part by our other podcast, Curiosity Bites. Curiosity Bites is the answer to the question, how can we bring people together who completely disagree? This is exactly what your heart, your soul, and your mind has been craving. Curiosity Bites, it's your chance to sit in on real and very often intense conversations with world's most interesting people. We're talking about astronauts, neuroscientists, multi-Grammy award-winning entertainers, quantum physicists, philosophers, holy people, truly, completely fascinating people. Even some people you might think you would automatically disagree with, who you will find truly fascinating. This, to get your teeth into a delicious episode of Curiosity Bites, simply go to dovbaron.com and find out how you can sign up. As always, you can find both of our podcasts wherever you tune into podcasts. That is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever it is you tune in. We always need your help, though, in staying relevant. So please get over there, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And if you are a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. And we are honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. You can also find both of the podcasts on Google Home and Alexa by simply saying play Dov Baron podcast. So again, thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down and sort of dive right in. We all rave on about needing better leaders. But what is a better leader? You see, it's hard to not feel like to be a great leader, you've got to be bold, while at the same time, you're somehow expected to walk around on eggshells and not upset anybody. Where is the line? How can you do your best? How can any of us do our best? Bring out the best in those that we work with and we lead, and serve at the highest possible level to make sure that we are indispensable. Well, that's what we're about to find out on today's show. Our guest on this show is Bruce Tulgan. Now, Bruce is a multi-bestselling author of no less than, wait for it, 21 books. Books such as It's Okay to Be a Boss. He's the founder and CEO of Rainmaker Thinking, a management research and training firm who've interviewed over 500,000 people for more than 400 organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me welcome recovering lawyer, author of the Harvard Business Review book, The Art of Being Indispensable at Work, Mr. Bruce Tulgan!
Wow, Dove, I think you win the award for the best introduction I've ever received.
Thank you. Nobody's called
And
you a recovering lawyer before?
I've been doing this for 27 years, and I don't think anyone has ever introduced me quite like that. So this is
Thank you,
pretty
sir.
cool. Thank
That's
you.
good.
What an honor to be here with you, and a privilege, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, sir. That's very kind. Now, where we always like to start the show is in this place. This is a leadership show, and every man and his dog and every woman and a cat seem to be convinced that they're an influencer. So what I like to always start the show with, who is somebody that we may not have thought of, may not be top of mind for us, who is been a real influence on you and on your leadership, even if it's somebody we don't know and would never think of?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been doing this for 27 years. When I say this, I mean, not working, but watching people work and taking notes and interviewing people about their work and taking notes. And so along the way, I've met so many CEOs but also along the way, I've met plenty of people on the front lines. I've learned as much from people who manage folks who empty bedpans in nursing homes as I have from some of the most powerful CEOs in the world. We've done a huge amount of work over the years with the United States Armed Forces. So I've learned a huge amount also from those guys. And I say guys, I use the term guys, a gender neutral term, but most of them are men. And so again, there I've learned from young men and women who.
But is there somebody that stands out for you who isn't, the regular sort of go-to, oh, I was influenced by this person, but maybe somebody we wouldn't think of who's
right, really, like not Jack Welch. Jack Welch, by the way, was my very first client.
Right.
So I could say Jack, Big Jack, look, so one of my best friends and is also a guy I've done karate with since he was 12 and I was 16. He happens to be a CEO of a zillion-dollar company. His name is Jeff Krause. In fact, I'm writing a book about him called The Karate Master CEO. And so, Jeff is sort of a counterintuitive example, I guess. I mean, you could look at the guy and say, well, he's got an MBA from Berkeley and he's been a CEO now. This is his second time around. He's only 50 years old, but here's a guy who, and of course he's a close personal friend. So I have a soft spot for him. And also he's he's a fighter, and he's really tough. So I only say nice things about him. But the truth is, watching this guy as a turnaround CEO, I've learned so much from him that I'm writing a book about him.
What would be the single lesson that you've gotten from him that you would pass on or like to pass on here?
Yeah, what I love about Jeff
nail down one thing.
Yeah, what I love about him is he can take a punch. And what I mean by that is even in the moments of greatest adversity. So he's been leading this organization through COVID, for example. He is able to maintain his equilibrium, to keep his head on straight, to continue to be someone that other people can look to for guidance and direction and support. And he makes decisions quickly. And he keeps everyone sort of moving in the right direction. And I've seen this before, right? So COVID is probably the greatest example. But back in 2013, 14, he was leading a different business and there were substantial market headwinds. And what amazes me about him is his ability to just keep going. And keep moving forward. Okay, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? And to guide, I think he's acutely aware that, here are hundreds or in some cases thousands of people whose livelihoods and careers depend a lot on the decisions he makes. Of course, the investors are going to make a lot of money too. But what I love about him is his ability to keep his head on straight, even in difficult situations, even while somebody's throwing punches at him.
Mm-hmm. So I was going to bring up this up later, but you've already brought it up. So let's go there. So karate. This is something that is a big part of your life. Tell us a little bit about how that, uh, how you got into that, and how it impacts the way that you lead.
Yeah, so when I was 7 years old, I was a soft little kid, and I think that the other kids didn't much like me and poked at me and made fun of me and were mean to me. And my mother said, "I know what we'll do." I mean, it was the early '70s. My mother said, "Oh, we'll take him down to karate school," and
Sure.
you know, and as it happened, the school happened to be like a really serious karate school. I remember it smelled horrible. Over the years, I got used to it. And there are all these guys, punching, breaking 2x2s over their legs and punching each other and kicking each other, and I was terrified. And I remember, my mother said, "Now these people are very serious, so if you're going to do this, you got to be really serious about it." Well, I was 7 years old. Get this, the guy who was my teacher then lives here with us now, going on 6 years. We have, my house is next door, and our office and dojo is in the house next door, and we have a few guest rooms. And my teacher from when I was 7 years old lives with us now. So it's karate. Like, it's not that I couldn't have a conversation without mentioning karate. Sometimes I do, but
Occasionally.
yeah, but it comes up a lot.
Sure. How did your karate teacher from when you were 7 end up living with you?
Well,
'Cause how old are you now? 50?
I'm 54, and
54.
he'll be 79 next week.
Okay.
And so that's how, basically, that he's been my teacher forever. And
Oh, he continued to be your teacher.
yeah, he's been my teacher all this time. And
Wow.
when I was able to buy this house next door to our home and get a zoning variance to put the office here and put in the dojo, and I said, "Hey, why don't you come live with us?" And in fact, his grandson even lived with us for 2.5 years, and we put him through community college. And the kid came with a dog. There's and then, so get this. So the kid had to go back to Florida because, people do. He finished community college and he went back to Florida, where he's from. But I got to keep the dog.
Why? He couldn't take the dog with him?
Yeah, I mean, he couldn't take the dog with him. And, I am like a permanent foster uncle now for the dog. But we're pretty close. That dog loves his uncle. And and I learn a lot. I always say I've learned a lot from my mother-in-law's cats when it comes to fighting. But I've learned a lot from taking care of children over the years. We don't have our own children, but I've taken care of children over the years, and I'm learning a lot from the dog. I guess I try to learn from everything. I try to stay curious, stuff.
Yeah, well, that's the key to life as far as I'm concerned. So let's talk about the book, The Art of Being Indispensable at Work. And before we jump into it, one of the things I think it's important for us to do is to be really clear about what we're not talking about, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about being indispensable at work means learning another set of skills, becoming more highly qualified than anybody else, or doing 17 jobs and wearing 17 hats. And I think a lot of people are trying to be indispensable and end up extraordinarily burned out. And I know that that's one of the things you talk about in the book. So let's talk about what being indispensable at work is not first.
Yeah, that's a really savvy way in. In fact, that's really why I wrote the book, is because what I was running into over and over again is, everywhere I go, everyone's getting squeezed, right? People are getting squeezed. They're like, my boss is squeezing me. You got to do more, better, faster. Hey, great. Glad we had this chat, right? And, but we're cutting your budget, and then, people tell me every single day, it's not just their boss who's coming to them with requests or assignments, but they're, if you've got people who report to you, your direct reports come to you with needs and requests, and people sideways and diagonal from everywhere. People are inundated by requests from all over the organization, and people need to depend on folks all inside and outside the organization whom they can't easily hold accountable. And so people are getting squeezed, and everybody wants to be that indispensable go-to person, right? So, okay, when unemployment's really low, maybe you feel like the pressure's off. But people worry about their livelihood and their career, especially in difficult times. And so, to your point, that might make somebody feel like, well, you got to say yes to everyone and everything. Like the way to be indispensable is not just to be great at your job, but to be the only person who can do X, Y, or Z. Well, look, if you're the only person who can do X, Y, or Z, why aren't you teaching somebody else to back you up? And that's a business risk. Or some people say, well, I got to have the best attitude. Whatever somebody asks me, I say, yes, 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 even if I end up overpromising. Well, if you end up overpromising, you're going to disappoint, right? Some people are like, well, if I just outwork everyone. I've had people tell me one thing: nobody will ever outwork me, And so some people, they get the idea that that's what it is to be indispensable.
Right.
And in some ways, of course, those are table stakes. You got to have a good attitude. You got to work hard. You got to be good at your job. But the people who stand the test of time are the ones others know they can rely on, right? When people know they can depend on you, so they can depend on you to do the right things for the right reasons, that you're playing a longer game, that you're taking into account other people's needs and the needs of the organization, the mission, you're aligning with the chain of command, you're making good decisions, and you're respecting other people's needs, and you execute, you deliver for people. In some ways, I feel like what I went into was this incredibly complex problem of the collaboration revolution. The world is becoming more complex and more demanding, highly interconnected, rapidly changing, fiercely competitive, knowledge driven. Everyone's getting squeezed. And what I came out with was, the people who are succeeding are the ones who stick to the basics. They build relationships based on authentic, ongoing dialogues. They focus on what they can do for others, not what they need from others. They focus on building up their reputation in the long term by doing the right thing. They focus on making good decisions. They focus on only promising what they can deliver. They focus on, knowing what they want to be known for, and say, hey, that's my specialty. I can deliver for you. Yes, I'll take on new things, but being honest about their learning curve. They don't fake it. They don't pretend. They don't juggle. They don't play politics. They don't point fingers.
But just to address that for a minute, because many leaders feel like they have to do all those things. They're running those stories that is, particularly in a fragile environment, they feel like that is exactly what they have to do. They feel like they've got to keep saying yes, that they've got to learn new skills. And of course, some of that is true, but it's this constant, it's running driven by a force of, I'm not good enough, and I can be replaced at any moment. The only way to be indispensable is to not be able to be replaced. And the only way to not be replaced is to outwork, out energy, out yes people. And that is exactly the opposite of what you're talking about. And this is why I really want to get this across.
Yep.
Is because this thinking will, aside from burn you out, will actually make you less productive and easier to replace, because you're just functioning at 10, 20, 30, maybe 40%, but not much more all the time. So what's the first thing someone can do who is listening to you about this and understanding this and going, okay, well, this is my strategy. I'm terrified of being replaced. So I'm saying yes to everything, and I'm trying to learn something new every 10 minutes. And I realize I'm burned out. What's the first thing I can do to slow it down and still move me in the direction of being irreplaceable at work?
Yeah, well, you are hitting the nail right on the head. It's precisely because of that dynamic and that discourse that a lot of what I have to say, it feels like take a walk every day and eat your vegetables, but it turns out it's pretty counterintuitive. That to me, the number one thing, look, of course you got to be good at your job. Of course you got to have a good attitude. Of course you got to work hard, of course, right? And then the number one thing that can undermine you is overcommitment syndrome. So look, nobody can do everything for everybody. So if you try, you are dooming yourself to overcommitment syndrome. If you're overcommitted, here's what ends up happening. You try to steamroll people in relationships. That undermines your influence. You try to badger, beg, and bribe. That undermines your relationships. You sometimes get into relationship conflict. You might even bully. You might even threaten, hey, if you don't do this for me, I won't do that for you. That undermines your real influence and it undermines your relationships. Maybe what you try to do is, what people say is it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. I think that's a really bad idea. If you're a steamroller, you pretend to have authority that you don't have. You try to get stuff done. You end run the chain of command. You convince people to do things maybe they're not supposed to do. You set yourself up for failure. People end up going over each other's heads. And that creates relationship damage. It also creates delays. It also often creates a lot of rework. So the irony is that the best way to give yourself power is to anchor yourself in the chain of command, have really clear priorities, really clear ground rules. And then every time somebody makes a request of you, see, instead of thinking that all the action is in the ask and answer, all the action is in how you deliver for people. Right. So the ask and answer is just either a setup for success or for failure. If you say yes and don't deliver, that's what you're going to be known for. Yeah. If you say no and it turns out to be a good decision, all that does is make more time for a better yes. Right. If you end up trying to juggle all the time, you are going to drop the ball. And what happens is, it turns out that when people operate this way, when people think that they have to say yes, 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 and outwork everyone, you're not the only one. See, other people are doing that too. So you're relying on them, but they're overcommitted. They're relying on you, but you're overcommitted. Not only that, but you might be overcommitted differently at different times in different ways. So you're letting each other down. What this leads to, this dynamic, this lack of structure and this lack of authenticity, this lack of good decision-making, good planning, real cooperation, real coordination, real collaboration. What it leads to is unnecessary problems, unnecessary delays, lots of relationship friction, and confusing competing priorities. And so it actually does not make more work get done better and faster, right? What happens is you have unnecessary problems, unnecessary delays, and relationship friction, and people get burned out. And often when they get burned out, what happens is they don't necessarily just leave. Now, sometimes people leave and then they find themselves in a similar pickle elsewhere. But often what happens is people get so frustrated that they get siege mentality. And then that same person who was trying to please everyone by saying yes, 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 starts saying no, 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 no. Not because no is the right decision, but because they're drowning in competing priorities.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So you're making the yes decision for the wrong reasons, and then you end up making the no decisions.
And I want to put a pause in that because I want people to grasp that for a minute. That if you, and this is, just I want you to think about this at your family level, at your relationship level. If you keep saying yes at home, maybe you're that kind of parent, you've said yes, 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 and eventually you will blow your stack. because you just can't cope anymore. And now you've grounded your kid, you've overreacted, you've responded with a disproportionate response. You've now given an 8, 9, 10 response to something that should have been a 2 or 3, but because you never dealt with the 2s or 3s before, now it's a overthink. Now, here's the challenge with it in leadership. The challenge with it in leadership is, as a leader, your number one thing that you need to understand is that you are of influence just by being there. And what does that mean? It means by being of influence, you are modeling behavior. If you are in any form of a leadership position, whether it's managerial or right at the top of the stack, people are looking at you and saying, "Oh, this is what I should do that if I want to get up on the ladder. So I want to get to the next stage." So here's this leader killing himself, saying yes to everything. I guess I got to kill myself and say yes to anything if I want to get your respect. And what happens is you end up creating a really dysfunctional culture. So this is why this is important. It's vastly valuable to you in order to slow down and become relational, because that's the key to what it is. So relational to self-management, and relational to others in knowing where your priorities actually lay. And this is why what Bruce is saying here is so vastly important to you, is to just understand that you are modeling behavior. Now, from that point of view, Bruce, when you think about the modeling of behavior, let's just look at what is it that so many leaders are just failing to do as in a basic practice. I know I've gone over the broad strokes there, but what is some of the things that they're failing to do that they need to just actually do? They just got to do this.
Yeah, well. First, let me just draw a bright line under what you said, Dov, because I'll tell you something. Slow down so you can do more, better, faster. Slow down. And I love that you said that. So I want to draw a bright line under that, because I think, and sometimes people get the idea that you have to learn how to say no. Okay. I think no matter how much you sugarcoat no, it's still no. If somebody comes to you with a request, the answer they're looking for was not no. But the way you give yourself more power to say no is by building a track record of making really good decisions, right? So if you say yes, 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 because you want to please in the moment, that's not a good way to make that decision. The way to make that decision is to really understand the need, understand where your specialties or your ability to learn something new and your available productive capacity fits in with someone else's need. Right. And somehow you're, is this the right assignment for you? Is this how you can best add value? Right. Sometimes the way you can best add value is by giving somebody a really good no, a really smart no, not a sweet sugar coated no, but a good no, a smart no, a no that makes either room for them to get a better person for that particular task, responsibility, or project. Or that gives you the time to evaluate it better and maybe do it a little bit later, right? But if you want power, if you want the power to say yes and no, you've got to slow down and make really good decisions. So really pay attention to people's needs. Ask questions, slow them down at the ask, at the request, ask questions, take notes, pay respect to their need. And then that shows them that you respect their need. It shows them how you make decisions. It also is probably going to help you make a better decision. And feeling heard and like their request is being respected, that is the sugarcoating that a yes or a no or a not yet needs, right? And then when you say yes, it's much more important to say yes in the right way, to say yes with a plan, with sequence, with timing, with proper expectations. and with good, okay, here's how we're going to talk going forward. Now, my view is that people, and what our research shows is that people at all levels in organizations of all shapes and sizes, who are not like hiding out and collecting a paycheck, everybody wants to say yes. Everybody wants to deliver, right? So you have to have the discipline to play a longer game. But you play the long game one moment at a time. And what I always tell people is think about your available productive capacity, right? Your time, your energy, your well-being, your ability to focus and execute repeatable solutions, your ability to learn something new, adopt a repeatable solution, and then apply it and execute it, right? So your value is not in making me feel good when I ask. Your value is in systematically executing on concrete actions and delivering tangible results that have fewer errors, that are done in a timely manner, and that are done in ways that diminish relationship friction and help everybody learn how to do everything more, better, faster next time. So we look around the corner and say, okay, here's what went great and we want to repeat. Here's how we're going to do it even better. Now, my view is that leaders play a critical role in this process. Leadership matters. And so anybody who reports, if you've got anybody who reports to you, right, they have dinner with their family and they talk about their boss, they're talking about you.
Yeah.
Right? That is a profound responsibility. So my view is that, that it's actually sacred. You have power over somebody else's livelihood and career. That is a sacred responsibility. And what our research shows is that too many leaders, managers, and supervisors do not put enough structure and substance into how they guide, direct, support, and coach their people. And a huge part of that, if you make the connection to the individual desire to be that indispensable go-to person, the individual pressure to say yes, the individual pressure that leads people to get overcommitted and become burned out, that what leaders need to keep their finger on the pulse of their direct reports, understand what is everybody's available productive capacity. And what leaders need to do is, with structure and substance through regular dialogue, keep setting people up for success and helping them add maximum value and maintain clear performance standards and expectations so that people don't think that you have to be a superhero to keep your job.
Yeah. So let's go a little bit into you, because we can see behind you the brand, Rainmaker Thinking. You, as I said in the introduction, you've interviewed, is it 500,000 people? I think you said it was.
More than 500,000 people
More than
from
500,000
different
people.
organizations have participated in our research over the last 27 years. Yeah, it's a lot of people.
Right. So let's talk about that, because everybody sort of comes across, it's nothing to do with you. It's part of the perception of what we do these days, but everybody sort of comes across as this, I'm here, but we don't, we may even say, well, the person went from here to there. But there's a journey, right? Life is a journey. So what was one thing you did for a long time that you found actually, you've gotten far enough along that you can see this maybe blocked you from becoming the leader that you aspired to be? What was the one thing that sort of constantly showed up? Now you can see it, but you were completely blind to it, because I think we all have to pay attention to our blind spots, but the problem is they're blind. So oftentimes the best way we can hear them or recognize them is by hearing somebody else go, was my blind spot. The fact that I'm here is only because somebody slapped me upside the head and made me realize, oh, you're not looking over there. What was that for you?
I think it probably still is a weakness of mine, that I suffer from what I often call false nice guy syndrome. That, I want to be liked. And look, that's as human as anything, I
Sure.
guess. I mean, unless you're a sociopath, but you know, and so sometimes I fail to play the longer game, and by holding people to a high enough standard, by requiring more of people, by doing the work of spelling out not just what the expectations are, but what it looks like to go the extra mile, monitoring, measuring, and documenting performance with enough rigor that I am telling people, hey, here's how you can do more, better, faster. I'm great at telling leaders that they need to do that, right? And maybe there's a neurotic repetition that I am indulging in, more consciously now than I was originally. My book, It's Okay to Be the Boss. Sometimes the books we write are giving us the messages we need to hear.
No, not sometimes. Every time. Yeah, we teach that which we need to learn. We are all teaching that which we need to learn. There's no doubt about it. It's absolutely true.
That's a
And I
great one.
appreciate you sharing that, because I mean, I wrote a piece years ago and it's called "Nice Guys Are Assholes." And that's what I wrote. And because nice guys, I know, because I was one of them. So it's not like I'm pointing the finger at anybody. Because the whole thing around nice guys is you want to be liked, but you're an asshole because you're saying yes to things that you cannot deliver on. It's exactly what you're saying in your message here. And so you become an asshole because people can't trust you anymore because you keep saying yes. And I love that that's part of this message here, Bruce, is this understanding that if you are committed to being nice and you might tell yourself it's making you indispensable, but actually what you're proving is that you're unintegral. What you're proving is that people can't trust you because you say yes when you should be saying no, and you can make a better decision of that. And you have to decide, do I want to be integral, or do I want to be liked by everybody? Because anybody who is liked by everybody will never know what it's like to be loved by anybody. Did you hear that? I want to say that to you again. Anybody committed to being liked by everybody will never know what it's like to be truly loved by anybody. You cannot be liked by everyone and be truly loved for who you are, because who you are shows up as somebody different depending on who needs the approval. So this is why Bruce's message is so important. Your indispensability is not from your ability to constantly say yes to nonsense, but to actually have the clarity to say no, so that when you say no, they go, if Bruce said no to me, if Dov said no to me, if Charlie, Susan, Betty said no to me, there's a damn good reason here. These are people who want to say yes, but they say no because they thought about it. And as a quick clue to everybody, just to give you a quick tip and tool, this is the answer. If you suffer from what I call nice guy syndrome, I used to have it severely. Here's the answer. Your knee jerk is yes. So the answer you have instead is not no. The answer you have is, that's interesting. Give me a little while. I'll get back to you in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is that you need to set. You set a block of time and you hold that block of time. This is an emergency. I understand, but you need to give me this period of time. You will then say to that's saying to that person, I don't knee jerk. You're saying to that person, I think about my decisions. They understand that you're going to come at it. Now, they may not know that you're wrestling with whether you're going to come across as an asshole or a nice guy. But the truth of the matter is, you are actually going to think about whether you can really do it. And this is indispensable for you as a leader. This is what will make you a great leader, is that pause that we all need to learn as leaders. And we too often as leaders, we are knee-jerk respondents, and we're teaching our people to knee jerk to the people that they serve, and they're serving people and they're knee jerking, and it creates a dysfunctional culture. So stop and say, that's very interesting. There's no dismissing. Let me think about that. I'll get back to you in X period. And if you can do that, you will put the nice guy on pause so that you can, instead of being nice, you can be kind, vastly different. And nice, by the way, NICE, neurotic, insecure, controlling your emotions. That's the acronym I like. So don't ever call me nice. It's an insult. Kind, always. Nice, never. I don't want to be nice. I want to tell you the truth, and I want to do it in a kind way. So I really appreciate where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. And I will say, just to add one piece of that puzzle, sometimes somebody's ask, their request is sloppy. And it may be sloppy, because they don't understand exactly what you do. They may not understand exactly what they need. And so, I think the additional nugget I'll add there is, make sure to ask questions and take notes conspicuously, and then take that pause. Because it shows somebody that you're curious and you're asking questions and you're curious about their need.
Absolutely.
Which makes it a lot easier to swallow a no later on. And you want to be, what you said before, I love that you want to know if somebody, if you say no to somebody, you want them to think, wow, if you said no, there's probably a really good reason for that. And it's not because you're drowning in other people's competing priorities. It's because you take them as, you make good decisions. And by the way, I will tell you what our research shows about there's the 5 most common jerk boss scenarios was and they all come from weakness, right? Number 5 is when somebody doesn't keep track of what's going on but makes big decisions that affect people. Number 4 is when a manager pretends things are up to you when they're not, and then comes back and says, well, why did you do it that way? And they're like, well, because you said do what I think I should do. Right. Number 3 is when leaders let small problems slide, but then those small problems turn into big problems. Number 2 is when the leader pretends to be your friend and builds false rapport, but then gets all serious when the work gets serious. And the number 1 jerk boss scenario is the boss who soft pedals. Hey, don't call me your boss. We work together. Hands off, hands off, hands off, until they're angry. And the only time they pull rank is when they're angry. And so I call those the 5 most common jerk boss scenarios. That's based on, our decades of research. And I think each of them is an example of false nice guy syndrome.
Exactly. So just as a quick side here, can people get that list of those 5 from your website?
Yeah, it must be on there somewhere in an infographic or it's in a book. If somebody's really into it, send me an email. I'll send you a book.
Yeah, I just would like people to have that because every one of those things you just described for me isn't part of nice guy syndrome. And what it's doing is it's making you a bad leader. And sometimes it's going to give you, like, reading it and seeing it is going to give you that insight into, oh, that is my blind spot. That's what I'm doing. And sometimes every one of us needs that slap upside the head that wakes us up and makes us go, okay, all right, I got to admit this. And that's really important. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
It's we are aligned.
Yeah. So let's just talk about this, because again, the journey is the journey. So, you've been very open here, and I appreciate it, and your honesty about the nice guy and teaching what you need to learn. But obviously there must have been a turning point in your leadership or in your business philosophy, because you would have drowned under nice guy and you've become very successful. You've got this organization that's doing research all over the world. You're serving great organizations. What was the turning point in your life, in your leadership, in your business philosophy?
I don't know if I would point to one moment where there was an epiphany. I can tell you that throughout my career, I've had, moments of success where like, oh, I got my first book published and I said, this is it. I'm going to be big, right? Or, I get a piece in the New York Times or on on NPR. So, all right, now, I'm in HBR, now I've hit it big. And it turns out, no, you got to work hard every day. And so, I don't know that there was one moment. I can say that it's been accretive, it's sort of like karate. What we do, our style is very simple. We do the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And, and it's just fine tuning. And so I think, with every interview, sometimes I'll do an interview and be like, whoa, I got to write a book about that. But it's usually that I'm always doing interviews, I'm always writing reports, and insights bubble up. And I think I probably have more insight than I have self-management skill. I guess, everyone is capable of being their own worst critic. I always say, the first person you have to manage every day is yourself. The second person you have to manage every day is everybody else you have to deal with, right? But I think probably, where I feel the greatest weakness is in my own self-management, in taking good enough care of myself. I think where I am strongest is in being able to learn from other people and learn from their experiences and see from the outside what's really going on when I interview somebody.
But it's interesting, Bruce, because, I was a boxer and a martial artist too. My arts were different than yours, but, you know, going and studying what I was studying, every day you start off by practicing for 30 minutes before you even started the class. You do your forms. If you're karate, you do your katas, right? And that's what you do.
Yep.
And it's nobody bitches, moans, or complains who is serious. They just like, okay, this is what you do.
Yep.
And I, a very good friend of mine who is a black belt karate guy. That's his background. He's the sensei leader. Jim he's been on my show many times. He's a wonderful guy. He's a personal friend, and it's one of the things he talks about is like what is the katas of your leadership? What is the things that you just do every day as a discipline? And part of your discipline, I would suggest to you as you listening, watching us right now, is what is your kata today is a pause before a no, a pause before a yes. So that's one of your katas, is just to say, that's interesting. Let me think about that. I've taken some notes here. I've paid attention to what you've said, and I need a little bit of time to consider this, to get yourself off that knee-jerk response, which if you have ever been in street fights, the person who beat the crap out of you is because they understood where to pause. In fighting, we learn. In boxing, we learned the same thing is you wait for the pause. There's that pause and you're paying attention. You pause and that's when you strike. You don't strike out of reaction. You strike out of pause. And it's the same thing with leadership. You strike out of pause. Pay attention. Here's our pause now. Here's the opening. And I think
timing is everything, right?
Absolutely.
And timing is everything.
But being able to recognize that timing can only happen from there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of the reasons why if you say yes, 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 you doom yourself to disappoint. And not only that, but the strong likelihood is you're not going to make the decision about, okay, so I'll disappoint this person today or this or that person tomorrow. If you were that organized and rigorous, you would have done that in the inquiry portion of the interaction, not later on when you're overwhelmed.
Absolutely. So as we come to the close of the show here, Bruce, one of the questions I'd like to ask, I'm going to ask you to share where people can find out about you and all your resources in a moment. But one of the questions I like to ask is this. When you think about what we've talked about today and what you've shared, what is something that our viewers, our listeners can go away and do, put into practice in a very practical sense in the next, preferably next 5 minutes, but certainly within the next 24 hours, and that would allow them to really integrate what it is you've been sharing?
Yeah. So at the point where you have a need, where you have a request, take a deep breath and think about what we've been saying, but from the perspective of your need and your request. Make sure you're going to the right person. Make sure you're doing all your homework. You know what they do, you know how they do it. If they have repeatable solutions and job aids, learn about what they do. Make sure you go to them without false urgency, but give them plenty of time. Do all of the parts that you can do to make it easy, right? Help other people help you. And do your best to plan ahead. Probably the biggest thing that goes wrong in collaboration is false urgency. Going either to the wrong person at first, or going to somebody without enough lead time, or without doing your homework, or without doing the parts that you need to do to allow them to do what you need them to do for you. And then make sure that you have continuity. So when you deliver for someone else, or when they deliver for you, practice extreme gratitude, practice extreme alignment. Make sure you both had the same experience. Do a good after action review. Hey, what went right? What went wrong? It could be a quick stand-up huddle, right? It could be like, imagine you're doing a scrimmage before a game, or a practice before a scrimmage. After a play, hey, what went right? What went wrong? How can we do this better? And then plan. Hey, what's the next time you think this is going to come up for you? Or hey, this is the next time I think this is going to come up for me. Let's look around the corner together, and let's become go-to people for each other. And I tell people, you don't have to arrive today. Practice being the person you're trying to become.
Couldn't agree more. Fabulous. Bruce, please tell our viewers and our listeners where they can find out more about you and all of your resources. And I know there are a lot.
Yeah, the best place to go is rainmakerthinking.com. Our website has tons of free stuff. We got a blog, we got all kinds of stuff. And a lot of it's free. So help yourself. Rainmakerthinking.com is the place to find me.
And we will, of course, post that URL into the show notes, but we'll also make sure that we also post all the social media links for Bruce and for his company on Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and all those kinds of places where you can reach out and connect with him. And of course, you can find his books on Amazon and all the usual places. So it's all there for you. Again, Bruce, thank you very much for being with us. It's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you, sir.
Oh, it's a privilege for me. And wow, thank you for teaching me about my own work today, which is how I feel.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you. And for you, dear listener, remember you can hang out with conscious leaders and you can chat about this episode or any other past episode you've been listening to. Instead of our Facebook or LinkedIn groups, just look for the Leadership and Loyalty podcast. The truth is, it doesn't matter how successful you are. If your employees and your customers don't understand what gives your company meaning, you're only working at a fraction of your true capability. To find out how you can hire me, Dov Baron, as a speaker or leadership strategist for you, yourself as a leader, or for your organization, go to dovbaron.com. That's DOVBARON.com, where I will walk you through what's really next in your life. Because unified meaning is the number one, most monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for all individuals and companies. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everyone that you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about how you can truly be indispensable without being a nice guy, nice gal. but instead being clear and precise. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.